Okay. Hi, I'm going to tell you a story about Dene Tum. When he was born in the woods without hydro, running water. And the village I was born in was named Keohachet in 1956. And during the 1956 academic, I had no schooling. There was no such thing as schooling. We had to live in the woods and defend for ourselves for food and all that. During them days, it was the best time of my life. I spoke no English whatsoever. And when the government academic of residential schools trauma started was when they were rounding us up, were taking us out of the bush. It was life before ABC and 1, 2, 3. No natives had any schooling before then and spoke only their language. And during that time, when they took me away to attend Indian day school in the village of Keowachet, which was later renamed to Nakazli. And then after Nakazli, it was Nakazli Hotel. Now it is known as Nakazli Hotel Reservation. I was born and raised there, and when the government took me, they renamed my name from Dene Tum to Little Guy and gave me the name of Kenneth Patrick. That name I was raised through the residential school and Indian day school. And I never knew any violence whatsoever during that time because our grandmothers taught us a lot of respect, how to respect your people and your family and all that, not to show shame on them. They taught you how to dress really nice when you're going to a public place. And at that time, they were just legalizing liquor for the native people to drink in public place. And before that, they had a siren that rang at 9 o'clock, and all the Indians had to be back on the reservation. If you were caught off the reservation, you would go to jail, and your parents or your grandparents or your aunties or one of your family members had to come and get you to bring you back to the reservation. During all this time, I spoke very, very little English, and the hardest part of my life was when I went to residential school. Other native people were making fun of me because I didn't know how to say certain words in English. And they used to call me stupid and dumb and all this. And so I only went up to grade 5 and I always kept running away from residential school because we were treated really mean. We were physically treated bad and things like that. And they had a root cellar there. And they used to say, well, you want to get the old root cellar treatment and stuff like that. And the native people would climb up after that. But anyway, during that time, I kept running away. I kept running back to my trap line. But the government used to send this person over to hunt us down, which spoke Courier and English. And they sent a government agency with them. They called them Busby at the time, I think. And then the way it really impacted our people was they were so drunk and broken-hearted by taking us away and things like that. And they'd continue on drinking in the white man in the public because it was legal for them to drink at the time. They were able to go into any liquor store and buy liquor, and that's when the academic of our ancestors started dying off because the liquor was not agreeing with their system, and they would die of cirrhosis right away, really quick. The liquor was eating them up really bad, and most of them passed away without even speaking English because they never spoke English and they started drinking, and that liquor was really like a disease that just swept through the reservations. And no younger generation would think of speaking Indian. They all started making jokes of how to say things in English in the Indian way and things like that, just by drinking all the time, partying, and they forgot their culture, and that made a really bad impact on people like us because we were the very younger generation that was raised in the woods, and then that was our lifestyle, and we were so organized that we never need to go into town to buy food or anything like that. We just bought flour, salt, and sugar, and baking powder, and we used to live on bannock and moose meat and deer meat and a lot of fish and a lot of wild game, nothing but wild game. When people used to come into your village and visit you, the first thing you would have to do is feed them. And then you feed them like stew meat or like food. You have to give them food because that's their welcome. You get happy just to see them because you've been isolated in the woods so long, and they tell you stories of what's happening and bring you news and tell you who passed away in their village and things like that. And what really was really affecting our people was the lack of elders were passing away so rapidly. They never had a chance to teach their younger generation how to speak Carrier because the younger generation got into the liquor at the same time, and they never had a chance to speak their language too before their grandparents passed away. So that's where we lost our language, and it had a great big impact on our people. And when you went to residential school, you were forbidden to speak your language because they kept telling you that you're not a savage no more, and that you gonna have to learn their way of life, and because that's the way their life was, and that's the way you were supposed to get through society, I guess. But we forced ourselves to speak English because the only way you were going to get along in society was to speak that language. No sooner than you started doing that, then you start forgetting about your language, and then you start forgetting about your tradition and your culture. They used to go to church and sing this Lucille song, their clan song, and Polly Wilson song, and all these songs they sang really good. These native people that didn't speak English, but they sure can sing good Indian songs, and it really touch you at a time. And then when they knew they were going to die, the first thing my grandmother Elicho and Francisca and Marianne all did to me, in I think in back in '68 and '64 somewhere, I was about 10 years old. They brought me into the smokehouse and they covered my body in ashes after Granny told me to drink this liquid and knock me out. When I came to, I was covered in ashes, and they were using water in buckets, and they were singing this Indian song. And while they were singing it, it was like transforming spirits into you. I tried to scream because I saw steam coming up off the ashes when they were sprinkling it, and I blacked out and I got knocked out again. Then when I came to, my grandmother had me on her lap and petting my head and singing this Indian song. And I asked her what. I said, "Lou, what did you guys do?" And then she said, "We fixed you really good so no one can ever harm you." And then after that happened, they took me away to a residential school, and they all started passing away. My grandmother and my aunties and all that started dying. They got cancer and cirrhosis of the liver, and my sisters, my brothers, they all they're all gone. I'm the last one out of all of them left. And my nephew Jackson, Gaylord, and Penelope were taken when they were very young, at the age of 3. I never knew this child in my life until about a year or two ago when I was going back to school. I only had grade 5, and I went back to CNC in 2022, I think. After 54 years, I finally got my grade 12 voluntarily. I wasn't forced. And I got a grade 12. And I went to applied for fine arts carving in Terrace, BC at Coast Mountain College. They accepted me after I got a diploma, grade 12 diploma. And then I graduated my first year this year. And next year, if I done completed the carving, I would get my diploma. I never knew anything about schooling, reading, writing, and even today I still have trouble reading and writing. But I still struggle, but I do have people around me at all times to help me with my spelling and reading and writing. When they scooped us out of the reservations, out of our trap lines, all of us had grandparents that looked after us, but they never spoke any English. That was the advantage that the government had against us all. And all this, when this was happening, our grandparents wouldn't know where we went or what happened to us. But by the time they figured everything out, we were all stuck into reservations, and from every reservation around, Native kids were taken and into residential school. And the traumatism started by listening to other kids at night crying for their moms and their dads, and they want to go home. Well, all them crying and screaming at night stuck with me all these years. And then I made a comment one time where a terrace art school at. I said, I heard this kid crying, and I said, it sounded like residential school. All these kids were crying. They want to go home. They want mom. So they hear all night, mom, mom. That was the most traumatizing thing that ever occurred to us. And then us other ones that spoke English used to get mad at them and tell them, shut up, your mom's not coming to get you, and there's no more mom and stuff like that. Because me, I kept running away from the residential school. Well, they threw me in jail one time, and then they got tired of it, and they sent me to Brannan Lake School juvenile detention home in Nanaimo. They sentenced me there for 1 year for not complying with the residential school. And during the residential school academic, I was forced into the cellar, and the priest did some bad stuff to us there, and that was not, that was never to be healed ever. And I lived with that all these years. When I got home and I told my grandma about it, I said that priest was bothering us, and she hit me in the head with a cane and told me not to say things like that about a priest because they work for God. And then she said I might go to hell for saying stuff like that about him. So until then, after that, I shut my mouth. I never spoke nothing whatsoever about it. And then after lately, when I was going to Terrace College, I started speaking to instructors about it, and I started seeing a psychiatrist and counselors and all this, and I started talking about it more and more. Now I can talk about it, and it helps me because I release quite a bit of that, all the hatred and the anger I had for them. And last week I went through a transformation, and then that really helped me big time to release all the hatred I had for all of them. And then in the early 70s, in 1969, 70s, I think in 1971, they caught me into town, and the judge wanted me to go back to residential school, and I told him I'd rather die than go back there. But they got my dad, and they told my dad to get me ready. They were going to send me back to residential school. And I told you, I made up my mind that time I wanted to die. So I took a 30-30 out of a sporting goods store in Fort St. James in 1971, I think. And then I took a box of shells and I shot through the floor. And all day long, I had a shootout with RCMP, hoping that they'd fucking put a bullet through me, but it didn't work out that way. They waited till I was out of shells, and then my brother wrestled me down. Instead of getting help for me for traumatism from residential school, they sentenced me to prison for 4 years after they raised me to adult court. I was the youngest native that ever been raised to adult court and put in prison because of that. If they would have asked why this hatred came and started looking at it and started helping us and giving us counseling at that time, things might have changed. But instead, they turned us into animals and stuff like that. They started showing us more violence, and that continued on to our children and our grandchildren. All the anger, the yelling, and the swearing and stuff like that to my wife and my daughter and my grandson, they finally got fed up with it and said for me to get treatment. That's why I started seeing a psychiatrist. As of today, I still see the psychiatrist once a month and twice a week, twice every 2 weeks, I talk to a counselor for my anger. And I'm almost 70 years old now, and I'm finally getting healed from my traumatism from residential school. My wife and my daughter and my grandson never gave up on me. During the time I was in prison, my wife came and visited me and asked me to get counseling. And if you try to get a counseling while you're in prison, you show weakness inside of yourself, and people will take advantage of you. And that I never didn't want to do that, so I stayed cold-hearted until I got out of prison slowly. My wife, they said they don't deserve me yelling at them whatsoever. But she visited me until I got out of prison and my daughter Carmen was born. And that's when I quit drinking in 1987. And I continued on today without any liquor, drugs. All last year I cleaned out from all toxic in my body because I don't want to ever bring shame to my family again. And I don't want to ever be yelling at them again or show them any kind of anger. That's going to be forbidden against me for the rest of my life. I want them to see Dene Tum when there was no hydro or running water, way before ABC in 1, 2, 3, where we were taught kindness and happy and just be happy with what you got. And them days there was no hydro or running water. And today a lot of people they have trouble paying their hydro and running water bills and stuff like that. And the drugs of academic today is killing our younger generation out. And that's why today I'm telling you this story because hopefully it'll help our younger generation to get away from the liquor and the drugs and continue on our culture and try to get the songs back from what we lost and keep up with their culture of speaking Korea. We're at the stink of extinction of our language. Very few of us will speak fluent Korea. And maybe before I pass away, I would like to start teaching Korea in university and stuff like that. I have my grade 12 now. I feel so proud of it. I'm going to continue on and finish my diploma in art next year, and then take a year off and take a criminologist course where I can speak up for my people in courthouses. Because right now there is nobody that ever speaks up for them and try to get them into some kind of a program. Because it's never too late to get your education. And then if you get your education, that's one thing nobody can ever take away from you. That'll be the tools that you need for the rest of your life. And that there, I'll tell you one thing, boy, I wish I had my education when I was a young man. Because right now they say I'm pretty bright and I'm a natural artist. I do fine arts, I do a lot of nice carvings and things like that. I never knew I had that because I was so screwed up on drugs, alcohol, trying to kill the sorrow and this hurt and this trauma that they did to me. And when I went through transformation, a lot of the ladies and the women in there, they never couldn't believe that a guy or a guy would ever get molested. But it is happening today, and with human trafficking today, it's a very, very bad thing because when you lose a child or a loved one and don't know where they are, because my auntie Rosie Todd went missing in 1969. Even today, she has never been found. And then I had a spiritual advisor that passed away a few weeks ago. He said that it's going to take 2 or 3 lifetimes before residential school people get healed. Well, my oldest sister Mary Alice was in a residential school in 1958, I think. And then my second oldest brother Stephen Patrick was in a residential school, and I'm the third one. So that 2 life sentences is already paid, and I hope I showed a difference for the future generation of people that come to get together and overcome all the drugs and alcohol that's killing off our younger generation today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
That's it.
Yeah. So that